Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So today I'm going to be showing you how you can update mobile apps without the App Store, the age-old dilemma. So let me get the boring stuff out of the way. My name is Sani. I'm Nigerian, based in London, founder of Hybrid. I'm also a Google developer expert, and I organize the Ionic UK community. There's all of those stuff, but also I love the movie Avatar. Who here loves that movie? And with Avatar, I'm talking about like the blue people, by the way. Not the airbender, that thing, no. Exactly. That is the greatest movie of all time. If you have not seen that movie, we cannot be friends. All right, and I mean that. And yeah, you can find me everywhere online, Sani Yusuf. If you see anyone using that username and they don't look like me, please feel free to let me know. Trademark. All right. So today, you want a mobile application, right? Everybody wants a mobile app. So there's a lot of things you need to do when you want a mobile application. You think about development, you think about the platforms you want to support, you think about how you want to distribute initially in the first go, and also how you want to carry on updating your mobile application. So first, let's solve the development problem. We have multiple platforms today. We got Android, iOS, some other ones, Ubuntu, Firefox, BlackBerry, if you still have one of those. Those ones. So the first option would be to develop your apps natively. By native, I mean you'd want to use the tools that the operating system vendors actually made available. So we're talking about for iOS, if you want to go natively, you want to use something like Swift or that thing called Objective-C. It's supposed to be a language, even though it confuses you. With a UI kit, you use Xcode and all of those things. For Android, you'd want to code with Java, or there's a new one called Kotlin. Is it Kotlin? C++ also, you can do that with a native development kit. And you'd have your own component library with the Android SDK. So pretty familiar stuff, right? And for Windows Phone, no, just stop. Do not make native apps for Windows Phone. It is 2018. Stop. So let's assume that our development problem has been solved. Everybody agree that we've solved our development problem? We know how to create an app for iOS and Android. And then we want to, now we want to support multiple platforms, but it's like, is there an alternative? Because the problem with the native way is because you have this basically high cost, because you have one team for Android, and that team uses specific tools, and then you have another team for iOS, and that team uses specific tools. So if a boss hits this guy from this team, like, you can't just replace people and all of that. But on the web, this is not what we're used to. And this is where the hybrid alternative comes through, which is basically apps packaged with something like Cordova or PhoneGap. And they're running a WebView container, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. You can access device features like the GPS, Bluetooth, and like the camera and all of that, basically thanks to Cordova. Because with the web, it's very difficult to get access to the lower level APIs. And the greatest thing about using the hybrid approach is that you're still using the web. So you're not actually learning anything new. You're not learning iOS and Swift or Android and Java. You're actually just using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if we want to support all these multiple platforms with the same code by just going with the hybrid approach, we've solved that problem, right? Well, not really. Surprise, surprise. Native apps are really, really great for a reason. They have pre-built libraries that they give you. They have a lot of things like tabs, animations, hardware accelerated things. Like you can just throw things all around. But in the web, we don't really have that. That's why we have Bootstrap, right? Like you have like div or tables if you still use them, span and all of that. So, and you need to also understand that an iOS application looks completely different to an Android application. In an iOS application, they have a one button. Well, now they've taken out the button. They'll take out the screen pretty soon. People will still buy it. On Android, you have multiple buttons, and they all exhibit different behaviors. On Android, you have material design. iOS has a completely different sort of like experience. And so how then do you bridge that with the web? That's going to be very, very challenging. And this is where you'd use something like Ionic, which is basically an open source SDK that allows the web developers to build mobile applications. So the first thing about Ionic, if you haven't used Ionic, is just built to the web. It's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's built on top of Angular. I do not know what is going on with this particular slide, but we just, I don't know. It's supposed to be two superheroes, but yeah. So there's an awesome community around Ionic as well. I've been lucky enough to travel around the world, and I've interacted with a lot of people from different communities. And so there's more than 30,000 stars on GitHub. I think it's probably the top-rated TypeScript project on the internet, on GitHub. There's a Slack group with more than 13,000 people. If you don't have any question, Mike will always want to answer that for you. Mike, if you're in the crowd. And a lot of apps, top applications. There's an app called Swerkit that has more than 25 million users. These are apps built with Ionic. Untapped Beer is actually built with Ionic. You have native S components. For example, you can see this particular sort of like template. You don't really know what it does, but you kind of get a feel of what I'm trying to portray here. There's a header, there's a content area, and it's literally modeled off that. You can do multilingual support thanks to the, the NG True Translate library, and also you can do right to left, because we kind of forget that like almost 1 billion people read from right to left when we're developing applications. And that's really cool. And the greatest thing for me about Ionic is the CLI tool. The CLI allows you to do really, really cool stuff. Because back in the days when you were creating a web application, you made a change, you refreshed your browser, you saw the change. Today, you have to transpile, you have to webpack, you have to roll up. I do not know, and I never want to touch those things. So great, this is what the CLI handles for you. And you can configure and customize. You can pick and choose how you want things to look, where do you want them to look. And so we've solved our multiple platform problem. Right? Okay. So now we want to distribute our application. We've gotten funded $1 million, and we want to distribute our application. So with Android, it's actually pretty straightforward. You enroll, you pay them like $100, I think, a year. No, $100 for life. You do the whole certificate thing, and you code your application, you submit it. And then there's no approval process. You go straight to submission, and Google will pretty much let anything into the App Store. Exactly. Yes. You can make an app called Facebook. They would still allow you. Yeah, exactly. iOS, however, you'd enroll. You pay them around $100 a year, every single year. A lot of money. You have to do this thing called provisioning profile, whatever that is. And then you have to code your application. That's if you can find somebody that would actually be willing to work for you, because you have to pay them a lot of money. And then you submit your application. And you have to wait for the approval, right? And this can take weeks, depending on how drunk the person on the other side is. And then this happens, because they will reject your app for absolutely no reason. I've had my app rejected for being too visually unappealing. That was the word they used. Basically, my app was ugly. Exactly. And then you resubmit the same thing again without making any change. And maybe the guy is not too drunk, and then he approves your app. And you're like, why didn't you do it in the first place? But finally, our app is in the App Store 7 years later after the Android one. So now we want to update the actual application. All right, with Android again, not a lot of problem. Google would let anything. They would do anything for your information. They will let anything, literally. Exactly. No approval process. They will let that happen. And then you go to iOS, and then you write your update. You submit the update, then you wait for the approval. And that can take weeks. And then this happens again, because they're like, they're not going to let you go. And then you submit the same binary. And then a week later, they say, good, welcome to the App Store again. Okay. This is what Apple does to your apps, literally. They completely murder you on the App Store. We want to distribute as quick as we want to. How? Is there a better way? So consider this scenario. You have this great application, and your sales team tells you, for Christmas, we're going to change our logo to have a Santa hat. It's going to drive sales by 300%, I want to be rich. I want to have 300% more money. Well, why not? So let's try to update our iOS app. So let's say just before Christmas, like maybe the 14th of December, we decide to code our change. We submit it to the App Store. We wait for approval. It takes 2 weeks, and they reject everything. By the time your app is approved, it's probably New Year or Easter. So your users are going to be in like 2019, and their logo is going to be like jingle bells, jingle bells. You're going to have some confused users. Exactly. And think about this scenario. What if you want to distribute a different version of your app to different people? Say you want the British people to make sure that they have their metric system, and everybody else can have their empirical system, or things like that. You want different people seeing different versions or different colors. Like, for example, some icons are not appropriate in some cultures. You want to make sure you would do that. Or you just have a fatal fix. Like somebody decided it was a good thing to push on Friday, and you want to fix that problem on a Sunday. Or you're just typing, you and you want to completely change that, Exactly. And today in the web, that's pretty straightforward. What do? We just, when the update comes, you just push the update, push the Git, continuous integration, and pretty much that's all we need to do. If you want to do a different version of our app on a location, we have access to IP addresses and all of that. But on native apps, you can't really just do hot fixes. You still have to go through that process. And why is that? Because native code is compiled. It's a binary that has been compiled, right? So you can't like pick and choose how you compile your code. It's just you have to just send a new binary for security and a lot of reasons I do not know. But yeah, a hybrid application, most of your hybrid part is just built with the web, right? So why can't we just change the web part that we want to change? We don't need to change the entire compiled part. Shouldn't we just be able to do that? So yes, of course we can. We are web developers. So let me just show you this of how a typical hybrid application built with Ionic actually fits. This is your actual code of your application. Use Ionic, and then use Angular with that, and everything sits between a web view and a native container. And the white part is your application's code, actually. And that part that I have highlighted is just a progressive web app layer. It's just a web application. So that's the part we want to change. We don't want to change anything in the native part, right? This is where I introduce you to Ionic Pro Deploy. So what is deploy? Ionic Pro Deploy is basically developed by Ionic, some very smart people. It's part of the Ionic Pro suite tools if you've used the suite of tools. And it allows you to basically push live updates to channels. And you can have multiple channels, and you can have those live updates show up ASAP. And yeah, it's free to get started with too, if I didn't mention that. So let us do this. Let's see the demo. There are like 600,000 things that could go wrong. If anything just goes wrong, I was never here, this never happened, and we're just gonna continue. Exactly. So I already have, because of time, I already have my application built up. And let me just actually show you what I have built up here. It's an Angular Atlanta mobile application. We have all these beautiful people, every single one of them, right? Don't worry, I did not forget anybody. But I built this, so I should have like a little about page, So I have the about developer. Now, if you're looking at this, you probably do not see what the problem is. And this is probably where I'm going to show this in full screen. I'm going to flirt with the code of conduct a little bit. And this is a picture of me in Disney World Animal Kingdom, right? But I forgot I had a big head. And there are potential problems that could happen there. I did not say anything. So this is actually really happened. So, well, of course, we do not want an ngATL application that has that. So we want to do a very, very quick change. So what do? So if I go back to my code, this is just a standard application. I did not say anything. You did not see it here. So I'm just going to go to where I have that particular code. It's in my about page, right? So I have a much better picture, and I can just save that much better picture. Now, if we go back here, we have a much better picture. Everybody agree this is much better? Exactly. Okay, but how do we, if we actually go to our, so firstly, let's actually take it back here, and let's actually run this particular code on our Xcode. And if we go to Xcode and we run this, so we're just taking it back to the initial version, and we're actually going to run this on a real life, like actual. I couldn't afford an iPhone, unfortunately, so emulator it is. I mean, those things cost an arm and a leg. So we're just going to wait for the internet to take its time. Like I said, there's a lot of things that could go wrong here, and I think the internet is taking its time. So this is what we have, right? You know, that picture. So we want, let's say this is our users have seen this picture, and they've started, you know, gone on Twitter to be politically correct and all of that. So let's go ahead and change this guy. So we change this guy here, and we save him. And so you can see that this guy here has changed because this is the web part, but this guy here has not changed because I need to submit to the App Store, which I don't want to do. So I'm just going to come here. And how Ionic actually works is I'm just going to commit this code. I'm going to commit this file here. I'm going to say fix. Maybe not with that many X's. Fix for pick. And I'm just going to commit this code. And let's just see how the internet actually helps us. So I'm going to push this to the master. I need to enter my password. Who has a password for pushing to master? I do. But because before, so one thing I didn't tell you is that I already have an Ionic Pro account, right? I have a Pro account that has linked this particular application that I have on my desktop with an app ID with my Pro account. So the Pro account is free to create an Ionic Pro account. And you can see like some of the apps I've built. And then if I go here, every time I push to that particular master, you can see that that particular build has come through. And if I actually see this, you can see that you can see a status of Ionic in behind the scene actually building you a binary and all of that. So we're just gonna kind of wait for the npm install to finish and all of that. But this is actually pretty cool because it allows you to view all like the state of your build before you actually deploy it. And you can have like, you could deploy it to different channels. So the build is being uploaded and it's successful. So if you go back to the build now and I refresh this page, okay, yes. So now I can actually deploy this particular package. So I can just have my boss click deploy. I'm on the production channel, and you can have different types of channels, you know, and I can just click deploy here. So now this particular guy here can actually get that update. So if you actually look at Xcode, where is Xcode? Where are you, Xcode? Okay, so we can actually see Xcode here. It's actually doing some stuff. It's downloading the application. So let's just close this guy here, and let's open him up again. And so this is going to take some time because it's going to like try to get the latest build behind the scene, do a lot of stuff, and until it finishes and extracts that, it's then going to update my application. So sometimes this might take like a bunch of, like you might need to open your app a bunch of times. Like your user will carry on using your app, but as soon as that is done, when it's ready, it's just going to extract, and I'll talk you through that as well. So hopefully the internet, let's just close our app, pretend like we've just been using it a bunch of times, and we're going to open it again, and we still do not have our update. So there will be a prompt that will come in when this is done. So we can actually go ahead and actually see, while we wait for that, to see how this, where's the slides? So this actually, the workflow actually works. And how it works is you detect the update itself, the app will detect the update, and then you download the update, it would extract that update, and then that update will be displayed when it's ready. So when your users have used your app. So we can probably go back now, close our app again. Hold on, how do you actually, yeah, there we go. You close this guy, and we go here, and let's see if the internet has favored us. So the internet is still taking its time, it's thinking. So we will probably proceed now. Another thing I'm going to talk about while we wait for that is the other uses of deploy. So it's not only just to update your applications live. What about if you want to do things like real-time hotfixes that I already talked about, like actual code error? Or you want to do alpha beta testing. Say you want to deploy different versions of your app, different demographics, maybe by different genders or different like locations or cities. You want people to have different versions. You can also do that. But also if you want to like unlock a feature in your application, like maybe when a user in a specific does a specific thing, you want to unlock like a specific version, part of your application that is not available to everybody else. You can actually do that. So let's just go back here, and I think one thing we should probably do again is try to deploy this, just to make sure we're doing this right. So we deploy to production, and we click deploy here, and everything looks good. And we come back here, and we go to this guy. There we go. We have update. So don't worry about the whole jargon. So the internet finally gave us in. So let's go to our app. So now you can see that that picture has changed. Like we actually, we did not need to go to, well, I'm right in front of you. I didn't need to go to the App Store. But you can see how this is very useful. So basically, we've saved the day. The code of conduct is happy with us now. And we're going to try just one more update before we do. So I actually have a part of my application called the VIP speakers. I chose select speakers that I felt are VIP. And I know this is going to start World War III, but yep, it's my talk. I get to do it. So I'm just going to say VIP here. And I'm going to push this quickly because we're running out of time. And I'm going to say git push master. So when I git push Ionic master, this is, again, tied with my Ionic Pro account. So I can always have a link. And this is not replacing like my own Git, repository. I still have that. But every time I push to the Ionic branch, they already know that I'm the person because I have my SSH and everything, SSH and everything set up. And if we just do this quickly, we refresh this guy here. We can see that the VIP guy is there. And while we wait for him to finish, we can just move on with some other things. So feature unlocking. So the Pro is a suite of tools. There are other tools that you can actually take advantage of. Some of them like real-time error reporting. Some of them like if you want to actually build a native build in the cloud. So like if you don't want to buy a Mac and you have a Windows, but you want to create iOS apps, this is perfect for you. But also if you want to share your app, has anybody used Testlight? Does anybody like Testlight? Okay, there's like one or two people. Everybody hates Testlight, exactly. So this is an app that allows you to view your applications. And then if you're also like a designer or you want to do drag and drop of mobile applications, you can use the prototyper. And before we finish our parting words, let's see the state of our build. So we have our build here. So shall we do one last deploy? Let's deploy here to production, to deploy. And hopefully this time the internet is a bit faster. And we're just going to give it some time. So by doing this now, we just mimic that we're using our application and stuff like that. We wait for it. OK, so we close this guy. And let's try to open him again. One last time. Oh, internet. Oh, well. Let's try to finish our slides and see if we can actually see that VIP speak. Because I feel like everybody wants to see who and who I selected so that they will know who to shoot and who not to shoot. OK, now you can have one code for your application. This is what we've been able to demonstrate. We can also, if you notice, we have multiple versions. There's an Android version, an iOS version here. And it's all 100% code reuse. It's very time effective and conscious. And you can update from anywhere to anybody on the fly. If you need to get started today, you can just do this. Go to the Ionic Frameworks docs. You can follow people like Josh Maroney. He blogs a lot. You can follow me online at Sani Yusuf everywhere. I can already see the next speaker. Let's just see if the internet will help us here. There we go. Who wants to see my favorite speakers? Anybody? OK. So let's see our VIP speakers. So now you see there's a third tab, right? Can everybody see the third tab? There's a VIP speakers. So we go there, and I've just chosen really, just a bunch of 5 speakers, very, very, very great people and everything like that. So we have some VIP speakers in the house. But so we've just unlocked a feature. And yes, so I think that will be all from me. Thank you very, very much. If you have any questions, I'll be around. But thank you very much for listening to my talk.